This is Tyrese Halliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
Pacer Nation, what is going on? Welcome back to your go-to Pacers podcast. And ladies and gentlemen, Facci is back in the building. Facci, it's been a few episodes without you, but you are here, and we're here to talk all things NBA Summer League for your Indiana Pacers, who are at 0-2 as we are recording this in Summer League play. But how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Look, am I ever going to get that Summer League championship I've always dreamed of? Probably not. At least not this year. But feels good. I was away, took my family to the beach. I actually am, when you're listening to this, I will have started a new job. So a little bit of changes on my end. But the one thing that will never change is setting the pace coming right at you. Man, it feels good to be back.
Facci, you're looking fresh. You got a brand new camera. I can't even tell. I mean, seeing Facci in HD, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, it was like watching Facci in some standard definition back when there was no full screen on the TV, it was just a little square. That's what Facci was looking like with his crappy camera that he had on his old computer. But you've upgraded to a MacBook, right?
I'm living the good life now. It looks like someone maybe popped in a VHS player, anything like that, was watching me. But hey, I'm here in 2024, and it's feeling good. I'm glad to be getting with the times.
Yeah, this new job seems to be doing you well, but unfortunately, you got to see the Pacers in crystal clear version not play great basketball in these two games. But obviously, some things we want to talk about here. But let's start with that first game. Friday night, opened things up against the Brooklyn Nets, end up falling 97-95 in overtime. Your thoughts on that game?
It was a tough game to watch. Honestly, it was really sloppy. The Pacers had, I believe, it was 27 turnovers, and they choked the game away. They led by 15 points, under 5 minutes to go. They led by about five with under a minute to go. And just, they can try and play fast, but if you don't have the Indiana Pacers, you can't really play that style of basketball. So I think it was an absolute summer league type game where it's sloppy basketball, and the Pacers, they were on the wrong end of the win column.
Yeah, I will say this: when your starting point guard has 9 turnovers for your team, that kind of showcases exactly why the Pacers offense is fun to watch, but it's a requirement that you have to be a good ball handler.
It's,
And my first reaction to this game was, man, Quentin Jackson is not a number one guy, like a primary ball handler kind of guy. I feel like he's more of a scorer,
yep.
and you're asking a scorer to be more of like a, hey, play fast, play up tempo, get other guys involved, and that's just really not his game. So to me, it's like, didn't love what I saw from him at all. And then, of course, choking the game away, not being able to make free throws with the game on the line, goes to overtime. Just, it's one of those things where you don't want to over criticize players too much in Summer League because it definitely is developmental. But like at the same time, like 36 minutes he played in that game, and I don't think he was worthy of 36 minutes of play. How bad he was playing, I was like, man, this guy reminds me of a guy that only looks for the bat, like only looks to shoot himself, has a hard time getting other guys involved. And I think he finished with 5 assists, but that to me is not great considering that he had 9 turnovers. So I was not really impressed with his game, and actually I kind of walked away thinking, are they really going to give him a two-way contract? I really don't think he's worth it.
Yeah, it was pretty tough. You never really see an assist to turnover ratio as bad as 5 assists to 9 turnovers. But missing those free throws at the end to me was kind of like you don't want to write a guy off after just one game. But when he missed both free throws, only needing one free throw to win the game, that's when I was like, yeah, I don't know about that two-way spot. So, we'll see what happens. But there was a couple other bright spots. In game one, I thought one of them on the offensive side of things was Jarris Walker. You really wanted to see Jarris take over. Most talented player on the court by far. 25 points on 9 of 18 shooting. It got up at 8 free throw attempts, made 7 of them. But there was also some good Jarris and some bad Jarris. The good was the 25 points that I mentioned. The bad was the 7 turnovers and 5 fouls. So it felt like this is his time to play free, be the go-to option on this team. You saw the good, you definitely saw the bad.
I don't want to jump ahead to the next game quite yet, but just overall from both games, my thoughts on Jarris Walker is the motor is too inconsistent. And
Yes.
it felt like we've been hearing Rick Carlisle talk. Kevin Pritchard said a couple things. Maybe it was more Chad Buchanan who talked, but we've heard like this is a big week for Jarris. This is a big opportunity for him to kind of showcase some things. And I was on the radio with JMV here locally on Friday in the evening, and he was asking me, what are some things I'm looking forward to seeing from Jarris Walker in summer league play? And I said, I honestly don't really care how many points he has. I said, I want to see if he's north of, 8 or 9 rebounds per game in these moments. Is he playing really solid defense, locking in? And I will say, unfortunately, through the first 2 games, I haven't really seen that side. We've seen some offensive, upside there, but I think we kind of already knew that with his game. It was more so how can he develop defensively? And I just feel like there's too many times, maybe it's the fast pace is wearing him out, but it just seemed like he was a little bit lackadaisical at times. And I'll bring up a specific play that happened in the game against Minnesota that I want to highlight. But in this game in general, like, yeah, he had some really nice offensive moments, and there's no taking away from that because I know fans are excited about Jarris Walker, but that's not what's going to get him on the court. And I think I go back to what Jared Dudley said in his pre-summer league questions that he got at a media session. And he said, I've seen dudes walk into summer league and drop 30 some points and not make an NBA team the next
Yep.
year. But I've seen guys walk in there and get, 7, 8 rebounds and have 2 or 3 assists and 4 or 5 steals or whatever. And they walk away with a contract because they're playing hard every single time and they're going out there and showing it on both ends, even though it might not show up in a stat sheet. So I was kind of hoping to see more of that from Jarris. Obviously, the stat lines are always fun when he's like, hey, 25 points, 50% shooting. It's really good stuff. But you want to see a little bit more balance overall from him. And I just think that that lack of motor for him always being at a high gear is not concerning, but it's something he needs to work on, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, in the game, there was some moments. He had 2 steals, he had a block, but like he's head and shoulders the most talented player on the court for both of those teams from Brooklyn and Indiana. There was no one even close to draft spot wise to the talent of Jarris Walker. So you did hope to see a little bit more. You wanted to see him lock in. You want to see him contest more shots, rebound a little bit more than 6 rebounds, which is not a slouch mark by any means, but definitely not something that really impressed. I actually, in this game, and I don't know if we're jumping too far ahead, I was actually more impressed in game 1 with Oscar Tshiebwe than I was Jarris Walker. Because Jarris, the talent's there. For Oscar, I thought he had a good game in terms of what he does of being in the paint, dominating the paint. He had 17 points, 19 rebounds. 8 of those came on the offensive side of things. He knows his strength. He's really not leaving the paint. It's going to be dunks. It's going to be putbacks, things like that. I said, wow, this guy's battling. So I think that for Jarris, you want to see him go out there and dominate. For everybody else, you're starting to say who can contribute, who couldn't. In game 1, I thought Oscar made people say, why can't he be the third string center on this team? I thought that was a good showing in game 1.
Yeah, in game 1, I definitely think he had a great showing, and I'm not going to jump ahead too far, but I will just say this, in the closing moments of game 2, it was Enrique Freeman over Oscar Tshiebwe out there for Indiana, and it makes you
I
kind of
didn't hate it.
wonder, huh?
I didn't hate it.
Yeah, well, I think part of the problem with Oscar is just defensively. He's not able to guard quicker guys and pick and roll, and I think Enrique Freeman, which we'll talk about here in a second, has shown, hey, I'm super active. I'm really willing to move. I've got a better blocking ability than Oscar Tshiebwe, but Oscar, like, you can't deny 19 rebounds, Facci, in that
Wow.
game, 17 points, like almost a 2020 game. G League Rookie of the Year. Like, he's got skill set there, and he's good at what he does. And I think we've talked about this last year, but just to kind of reiterate this, Oscar knows what he's good at, and he doesn't get out of that comfort zone, which I appreciate that because sometimes you have guys trying too much where Oscar's like, you know what? I'm a rebounder. I'm going to get some points. And I will say this, I like his passing actually a little bit more than people
Him and
realize.
Jarris had something going on. They
Yes.
really did. They had a couple assists to each other. And as a big man that doesn't seem so like fluid or flashy or anything like that. Oscar had, I think it was 4 assists in game 1 and then about 3 in game 2. So it doesn't seem that that's, like a surprise. It seems like that's something he's probably worked on.
And I think part of that too also goes to they had some time together last year to develop some chemistry with Jarris playing in the G League and then just being in practice together. You can kind of tell, like, one thing about Summer League and why it's so sloppy to me a lot of times is you get all these guys in for like a week and half of them haven't, or over half of them haven't even played together on the court. And now they're trying to figure things out on the fly. It's not the greatest way to go about it. I mean, it's obvious, like, you're not gonna be able to sit there and be like, okay, we're gonna spend 3 weeks in training camp for Summer League and then go play. I'm not saying that, but you can tell, like, teams that have that chemistry that have played together, you can see it a little bit more than teams that are just getting together and they don't really have that ball handling point guard to kind of orchestrate things, somebody like that. So yeah, we know Jackson, Sheboy, Walker, Shepard, Brown were all on the team last year, but it's still hard to kind of have that chemistry when they haven't had a lot of time with the other guys that were out there in the rotation as well. So I do think that plays a big factor into why the games are so sloppy and why there's so many fouls called. I mean, the foul calls are ridiculous between both games, Facci. For the Pacers and their opponents, a combined 116 fouls have been called in 2 games. We don't need to see that. It's Summer League. Stop it.
It's painful. Honestly, it really is. I mean, Indiana had 25 fouls in the first game. They had, I think it was 32 or 33 in the second game. It's just nonstop whistle after whistle. And it's just, it's not even high scoring affairs. It's just this slow paced, a lot of fouls, sloppy, a lot of turnovers. You want Pacer basketball back. I don't know if I'd consider this Pacer basketball. It's like a taste, a little free sample. It says Pacers on the front of the jersey. That's worth something. But I definitely miss the group that we saw in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Well, and that's what I was about to say. Like you think about it, like most of the time, the last couple of years before this season, Indiana was ending their season the beginning of April. So you don't get to see the Pacers play until July. And you're even more hungry to see, okay, we've got a high lottery pick. We've got guys we really want to see what they can do. Oh, we drafted a guy last year. What are they going to do in Summer League with the new class we got this year? Now, all of a sudden, this year, you come into Summer League just watching this team play almost all the way to the end of May. So you haven't had that much time away from Indiana Pacers basketball, and you get to see this team back together. But then you're just like, oh, man, I got to watch Ben Shepherd, who just started a game in the Eastern Conference Finals, play in Summer League as a starter with a bunch of guys that don't really elevate his game. So to me, that's where it's just like, I feel like I would be a more appreciative fan if this was like watching the Pacers finish game 82 in April, hadn't played in 3 months, went through the draft process, and now we're here. But because they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, it's kind of like, this is such a drastic drop off from the high level of basketball we just saw for 2 months, basically, to seeing this. It's like, man, it's kind of hard to stay awake for this.
No, it is. We're spoiled. I mean, Friday night I was sitting here and I was just watching just turnover after turnover, and I was like, all right, you know what? Hey, we'll still get this win though. And then when they didn't even get the win, I was like, okay, this was just not the best Friday night, but I was happy that as we're recording this, the Sunday game was on at 5:30 Eastern. It was able to be like, okay, you know what? I saw the Pacers play a competitive game, but there was a few other things in the first game that definitely want to highlight. Enrique Freeman, you touched on him briefly. I like what I saw, and I feel that the feeling is mutual amongst Pacer Nation. This guy hustles. He really does. We saw the stats at Akron. You start to then say, okay, well, look at the competition that Akron plays. But I feel that Freeman has just a good feel for the game. He moves around a lot. He was contesting shots. He had 2 blocks. He had 7 points, 5 boards in that first game. There's a lot to like about Enrique Freeman, and I think the best is yet to come.
Motor, motor, motor.
Oh, yeah.
And he walks into the game, it's just like a whole level of intensity just takes off. And that is one thing I want to see more from Jarris. And that's kind of why I was saying the lack of motor from Jarris. Enrique Freeman picked up that slack a little bit because it didn't matter if there was a bad pass that got thrown to him. He'll dive on the ball to get the bad pass and try to save it. He just all out hustle all the time. And I think for a guy like Enrique Freeman, when you read his story and how it just was a walk-on at Akron and then ended up being the league leading rebounder in NCAA Division I basketball, it shows you the amount of work that he had to put into his game. And he is talented, but a lot of that talent comes from effort and hustle. Yep. And so he's got here because of that reasoning. And I think that it's just a train, he was just talking on defense in both games, really just communicating to other players, like, here's what we got to do. But yeah, I mean, it was a great debut, 7 points, 5 rebounds for him off the bench in just 17 minutes. And you could feel his energy in the game when it came in. And I think he's going to find a place to stick, whether it's in the G League this year, playing a lot of minutes, whether he does eventually sometime, make a 15-man roster. I think he's got that motor to keep himself in the league for quite a while, because you can kind of tell when guys just kind of go through the motions, maybe feel like they're a little bit more entitled. He doesn't feel that way at all to me. He feels like a dude that is hungry to get minutes and to prove that he belongs. He's got an extra chip on his shoulder. We love guys like that. And I think that, honestly, there is an opportunity for him to grow and expand off of just being maybe a potential two-way guy. Or actually, he did sign his two-way contract, I think, didn't he? So he is a two-way guy. So definitely going to be a two-way player this season for Indiana, but I do think that there could be more for him in the future.
Chip on the shoulder was the phrase I was going to use because it's real. It's just like hard work has gotten him everything in life, and I just feel like he's never going to stop working. And right now, I mean, it's early, but I already see people on Twitter calling for him to have one of those roster spots. It's like, guys, this is summer league. I love what I saw. It feels like he's been one of the fun players for Pacer fans to watch through the first two games. But I think that Indiana may have identified some really good talent late in the draft, which is awesome to see. And I look forward to following him throughout Summer League and definitely what he does in the G League, because I think he's going to have some awesome stat lines. And I tweeted out, Oscar and Freeman together in the G League are going to be punishing teams in the paint. I feel like those guys could each be having, anywhere from 12 plus rebounds apiece, maybe, double doubles left and right. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and some crazy box scores are ahead in our future. But another person that it probably took a little bit too long to mention him is Johnny Furphy.
We got to get to Furphy.
In game one, Furphy came out. I don't know if you want to call it jitters. Maybe the ball just wasn't going in the basket, but he started out I think it was about 1 of 8, and then he finished pretty strong. I think he might have went 3 for 3 in the second half. Finished the game with 12 points, 4 boards. I saw a lot that even with the ball not going in, to be able to say, okay, I think this kid, he moves really good without the ball. He's gonna make shots. I thought that he shook off a sluggish first half, had a much better second half, and I'm trying hard not to jump the gun right now and talk about his game 2, but we saw enough in game 1 to say, okay, I could see why the talent is there and why the Pacers were very excited to draft him.
The off-ball movement is something that is just, you can't teach it, and he just has it naturally. It seems like a natural instinct for him just to know where to be at. Kind of has good basketball IQ, a high basketball IQ. The shot, man, I mean, even though it wasn't falling in this first game, it's pretty. It looks good. It feels like it's going to go in. And when I watch him kind of cut, it does remind me a lot of Mike Dunleavy back in the day. Mike Dunleavy Jr., I should say. So he's got that ability in him where he can he's an off-ball movement shooter type of player. Sneaky good passer. I think that he has potential as a passer. We didn't see a ton of that passing ability, but I think that he can do it. But overall, like you said, he got better as the game went along, and I think it was just early game jitters, trying to get his feet wet. But like, nobody really shot the ball well from 3 in this game, Foch. I mean, the Pacers shot 17% from 3. I mean, Ben Shepherd, a guy that started in the Eastern Conference Finals, was 0-4 and went 1 of 9 from the field. So it was just not a good offensive performance from Indiana. And I think a lot of that has to go to the amount of times the game stopped, because when you have that many fouls in one game, it does slow the game down. Plus all the turnovers, it's not a good brand of basketball. But I think from the little things we saw from Furphy, it does get you a little bit excited about how he could fit into the Pacer system as a role player. And honestly, it's like he basically takes a McDermott role a little bit as that guy. And I think that while McDermott is definitely much more experienced and probably better at this moment, and you would trust him more, I think in a year or two, you're probably thinking, man, that was a very nice trade-off there getting Furphy, because I think that he's going to be able to stick. I really do. I think this is a guy that if the Pacers do make a consolidation trade in 2 years, they keep Furphy and he's a part of the rotation.
Yeah. Johnny Furphy, going back to the three-point struggles of the Pacers, he had 3 of the Pacers' 4 made threes in the game. So, the talent is there. I think that everybody, if they're not being too biased, could probably say he's not really ready yet. It's going to take some time, but this is going to be someone that I think that you're going to see have some really good games in the G League. And if, they do make that consolidation trade at some point, he's going to be much more ready, much more confident. This guy has a bright NBA future. I can definitely see it. He might end up being one of the steals of the second round when we look back at this draft 2-3 years from now. So I think that Johnny Furphy, to me, is someone that I'm really excited to see what he does next in Summer League. Another guy that actually did have a good game 1 was Kendall Brown. I thought Kendall Brown showed some stuff. He had 19 points on 6 of 11 shooting. He got to the free throw line 9 times, made 6 free throws. But you also got to remember, this is Kendall's 3rd time in Summer League. You are expected to be showing something. And I felt that in game 1, his 19 points, it was the second most for the Pacers. He played 27 minutes, and this is someone that is no longer on a two-way deal. It is one of those roster spots, a non-guaranteed contract. That's going to be something that we're probably going to have our eyes on all throughout Summer League.
Yeah, they have to make that decision, I think, the day the season starts or like right before it. So we'll have to keep our eye on what happens with Kendall Brown. But he did have a good first game, 6 of 11, seemed pretty comfortable out there, was doing some good things. He kind of runs so like he glides so smoothly, and it's almost like hard to tell how fast he's actually going because he doesn't seem like he's like Enrique Freeman just going all out, but he gets up and down the court pretty quick. I think he can kind of make sense of what this Pacer system's trying to do. I think he's developed and gotten better. Definitely more comfortable putting the ball on the floor than he was last year. I don't know how many times we saw him put the ball on the floor last year. He turned the ball over, so they put the ball in his hands a little bit more. Still, I just nothing really wows me with him,
I
and
agree.
it's a tough spot to be in because as the 15th guy, 14th guy on the roster, and nothing is really wowing or popping off the page. It's like, is there a better way to use that roster spot? Is there a better player out there that makes some more sense for you? Because if I'm Indiana and I'm looking at this point guard situation, from the first game, Quentin Jackson really didn't look like a point guard, and Tristan Newton only played 7 minutes, had 0 points, 4 assists. Not a great game from Tristan Newton. It kind of makes you wonder, maybe they should look at adding some veteran presence as a third string point guard just in case you do have an injury to Halliburton, McConnell, and Nembhard, and you don't mess up that rotation. So that wouldn't be a bad idea if I'm Indiana to look at some depth there. But yeah, it's just I really liked Kendall Brown when he first came into the league. I mean, I was really excited about his potential, but it's just weird to see a guy that can be a defensive wing that can't shoot the basketball.
Yeah.
And I just don't. I mean, he'll make a three every once in a while, but he's just too inconsistent as a 3-point shooter in this Pacer system for me to really feel comfortable about playing him any significant amount of minutes.
This is going to sound a little bit harsh, but I don't know if he's an NBA player. I don't. I think at this point, unless that offensive game develops, it's somewhat anything even half as consistent, it's going to be really tough for him to be able to get any meaningful minutes. There is not 1 minute that I could think of this year the Pacers trying to win that is meaningful that Kendall Brown could be on the court for. I think even if there are some injuries, I think I'd probably rather take a look at someone that's a little bit more of a risk before Kendall Brown comes in there. But I looked at it in terms of his contract. So only 250,000 is guaranteed by opening night.
Okay.
It becomes fully guaranteed on January 10th, 2025. So Pacers do have some time to make a decision, but do you really see Kendall Brown getting playing time in the early months of the season? I really don't. So that's going to be something to definitely have circled because look, if the Pacers right now they currently have one open roster spot. You would like to imagine that very well could go to James Johnson. James Johnson was at the first summer league game, so he's still staying in touch with this team. And then you look at, okay, well, yeah, do they want extra help at the point guard spot or anything of that sort? And I just think that to me, between James Johnson and just any other vet, to me feels a little bit more valuable than Kendall Brown. It was a good story of rewarding him last year, but that's more of what it felt like a reward.
Yeah, and I will say this Pacers have done a good job of rewarding those players too.
Yeah.
And it opened up a two-way spot as well for them to bring in Quentin Jackson. So like there was reasoning behind why they did it. But I'll just say this. It was a little bit surprising and jarring that Rick Carlisle decided to play Kendall Brown in the closing minutes of some of those blowout games in the playoffs over Jarris Walker. I just couldn't really wrap my head around why he was getting minutes over Jarris against the Celtics in that blowout game in game 2 when things were kind of going, Tyrese got hurt, went out of the game. So it's just like, what is happening here? I mean, that's pretty wild to me that Kendall Brown is getting more run than Jarris. And I mean, I get it. It's closing minutes. It's garbage time, whatever. But I don't know. Maybe Carlisle has an infatuation with Kendall Brown to a certain degree with like what he potentially could do. But I just don't see it. You don't clearly see it. Maybe somebody else does see it. I don't know. I know iPacers, Derek Kramer was giving him some compliments after game 1, but I think those were fine compliments. I don't think they were reasons not to be complimentary of him after what he did, but it's just nothing is jumping off the page. And I feel like they've kind of got all the spots covered in the positions that he's already going to be playing. So that to me is why I would not prioritize keeping him. because it just doesn't feel like you're going to maximize what he can do. But let's move over to game 2 now here, Facci. Indiana loses 105-94. Minnesota's defense is really ramping things up. They caused the Pacers to have 33 turnovers in this game, and they had 17 steals. This was incredibly terrible ball handling by this Pacers Summer League team. And it just kind of reiterates what we said from game 1. Like, it just shows you how special McConnell, Halliburton, and Nimhard are as point guards protecting the basketball, because when you don't have the right point guard in this system, it's not going to work. And I think that's the only thing I do. One of the only things I don't like about Summer League is when you don't have point guards that know your system and know how to run that system. If they can't run it right, then it just kind of makes it worse for everybody else.
Yeah, it's just not Pacer basketball. And Pacer basketball is, 30 assists. The turnovers are low. I mean, tonight there just really wasn't great ball movement. I mean, Tristan Newton led the Pacers with 7 assists. Also had 7 turnovers.
Yeah.
So it just completely wipes that out. And I feel that, I know it's weird to start with Newton, but it's like when we're talking about point guard play, it's like I've seen at times, the reason why, okay, hey, maybe this guy could be like a little bit of like kind of like a floor general-ish type player for them in terms of, the back end of the second round and what they're looking for a point guard to develop in the G League. But it just feels like it's going to be a long shot for him to be an NBA player. We'll see what happens. He's already one of the older players that was in the draft. So we'll see what happens, but another very sloppy game. But if we want to start with a positive, this is what I was itching to say before. Johnny Furphy. I mean, I saw it. I saw it today. 18 points. He came out the gates hot. I think he started the game, I want to say it might have been about 4 for 4 from the field. And just at times, so he had 9 points in the first quarter on 4 for 4 shooting. He had 13 points at halftime. Finished the game with 18 points on 7 of 14 shooting, 7 rebounds. We heard about the rebounding. This is a guy that the rebounding does not feel like a fluke, so that's awesome to see. 3 of those 7 rebounds came on the offensive side of things. He had 2 blocks. He had 2 steals.
Yeah.
Johnny Furphy, to me, was someone that got me excited to say, you know what? This is going to be someone that I think if a game is a blowout in either direction, we're calling for Johnny Furphy to get in and just be able to get a couple shots up, because we know it's not going to be this year, but that kid has talent, and I think that it's going to show in the long run.
No, I definitely felt the same way. It felt like he was very, very consistent all 4 quarters. Really knows, like I said in the last part of that, that recap of the first game, he just kind of knows where to be at all times. And I think he feels a little bit longer than he might be, actually. He is 6'9". I think he's got a 6'8.5" wingspan, so it's a little bit shorter, but like still, that stroke is smooth. Jamal Crawford was praising it, said, I really like this kid's shot. He just seems like he has a calm poise to him for a 19-year-old, doesn't seem to get too rattled at times. And it probably is easier to get rattled in summer league games too, just because of how inconsistent things are. There's no flow to the game, that kind of thing. So I'll just say this. I wonder what Rick Carlisle thinks about him after watching him in these 2 games sitting front row, because clearly Rick said this, scouting staff was high on him. I don't know if you saw that or not, but Rick Carlisle said that they had him 14th on their big board.
That says a lot.
So that says a lot. They viewed him as a lottery level pick, and he fell all the way to 35. I mean, that's a little bit surprising. So I just think that for where Indiana got him at, their ability to trade up and get him, and give up all the cash considerations they had acquired throughout the years to move up and get him from San Antonio, like that was a big move by Indiana. And I think that it was a smart move by Chad Buchanan, Kevin Pritchard, and their staff there, Ted Wu, Kelly Kroskoff, just because they knew exactly what kind of player would fit their system. And you could tell within the first 2 games that Furphy is going to fit this system. And I think that's all that matters. Targeting guys that make sense for what you do and how it's going to benefit your team is the way you have to build a roster. And I mean, hey, I'm glad that he fell to 19 fell to 35 at 19 years old, because there's just so much more room for improvement. I think that he's just starting to scratch the surface of what he can become as a player. And I really do think that he's going to be a rotational guy that will stick in the league.
Yes, he's definitely going to stick in the league. I think he's going to have a good career in the league. I think he's going to be able to be brought upon, as time goes on. They don't need to rush him. I think he's going to get valuable time in the G League, being able to work on his game. But like, this is someone that I'm just a firm believer that even through the rest of summer league, I think he's going to put up some good numbers. I really do think that he's not afraid of the moment. He's getting his shots up. We've already talked about his ball movement, without having the ball. I think that he's moving around great. And I think that just like you said, in this Indiana offense, he's going to get great looks. So
Mhm.
that's going to be something that we're going to be really excited about seeing and watching him knock down those shots. But on the other side, I think it's good to say, Jarris Walker, this was a game that I really wasn't happy with Jarris Walker in this. And I don't want to be such like a nitpicker or anything, but he had 15 points, 8 boards, 4 assists. You could look at that and say, okay, hey, good stuff. I look at it and I said, 11 of his 14 shots came from 3-point land. I feel that Jarris Walker is too good to just be relying on threes. And he made 3 3-pointers in the first quarter. And then after that, I felt like he just got too reliant on it. He ends up going, I want to say it was like 2 for 9 for the rest of the game, or 2 for 8 from three after that. And I'm like, I want to see something else. Like move around with the ball. Don't just do a couple dribbles and put a spot up three. So that was something that was a little bit disappointing to me. And he was a minus 14 in this game. He's too talented to play like he did against Minnesota.
Yeah, it just seemed like Minnesota kind of took him out of his rhythm. And I think, and I keep saying the same thing, and I'm apologizing for doing this if you're listening, but there was no flow to this game whatsoever. It was like stop and start and stop and start and stop and start. And I think that does play an impact. But there was one, I think it was Kendall Brown, maybe it was Enrique Freeman. Somebody threw a bad pass. They were trying to throw it out to the top of the key where Jarris Walker was at. Okay, so it's clearly a bad pass. I want to say it's Kendall Brown. Ball gets stolen. Jarris Walker half-heartedly jogs back to stop the fast break. And as I forget who even had the ball in the steal, but like when he reached in to try to swipe the ball, they called a foul. And so first of all, he picks up a foul. I know it doesn't matter because it's summer league, but like you're talking about like him in an actual NBA game, this is stupid stuff you can't do and stuff that Rick Carlisle will pull you out of the game for. He half-heartedly gets back, doesn't try to cut off the guy and contest the shot. Instead, he jogs back and then throws his arm in there and reaches in there for no reason, and they call a foul on him. And I just thought to myself, this is the kind of stuff that they don't want to see from Jarris Walker. And because of these type of plays, those are reasons why he didn't get into the rotation. So I think that if he wants to earn back Carlisle's trust, he's going to have to start. I don't know how many more games he's going to play in Summer League, but if he plays, the next 2 games, whatever, he really needs to go all out on the defensive end. I don't give a crap what he does offensively, Flashy. I agree with you. 11 of his 14 shots were threes. That's not a recipe for success to see what he can do because he can be more physical on the inside. But it was a little bit upsetting not seeing him play better transition defense, play better defense overall. He had some flashy moments. I'll give him some credit. He got a nice defensive rebound, had a great outlet pass that led to a Furphy dunk. I mean, that's little things that he can do that's going to give him an opportunity in a game that a lot of other players on this roster for Indiana can't do because he has such great feel and touch. But it's just it's a constant thing we're going to say about Jarris Walker. It's that motor, and
Yeah.
you cannot take your foot off the gas if you're trying to prove yourself. He's the 11th man in the rotation right now. And if he wants to crack the rotation, efforts like we saw today aren't going to be what get him in the rotation.
It's true, and this is once again. I mean, look, there was good talent, in this. Rob Dillingham, it was in this game, and a couple other good players. But I feel like Jarris Walker is another guy that should have gone out there and looked like potentially the best player on the court, and I didn't think he did today. You saw a better rebounding effort, and 4 assists in this game. He had 5 in the first game. So like the ball movement is real with Jarris. It's great to see. He is a gifted passer. But last year in summer league, I remember there was a game where he had like 12 rebounds or 15 rebounds and was getting, 3 or more blocks. And you saw a little bit more. And I want to see a little bit more out of Jarris Walker. I really do, because if we don't see it in summer league, don't expect that he's going to be handed anything. And when Rick Carlisle was being interviewed in game 1, he had said that they really want to see more out of Jarris at the 3. We heard it. So it's like that's expected to be that, hey, if he's going to be getting minutes, it is what we thought. It's going to come at the 3, and you just got to bring it defensively. So that's something I got my eyes on.
And I'm thinking, well, and he starts at the 4. That's what's kind of interesting too, is they said we want to see him play more 3, but they don't start Kendall Brown, who, like you said, is in year 3. They're starting Furphy, which I understand why they're doing that. But I will be interested to see if they try to play him more at the 3. Maybe they pull Ben Shepherd for the next couple of games,
Probably
don't play him because they kind of know what they're going to get with him. Give guys that haven't played at all in the summer league on the roster a chance to play. But like Dakota Mathias had a really good game, older veteran kind of guy, really shot the ball well. Maybe you put him in the starting lineup for Ben Shepherd, or maybe you go Kendall Brown for Ben Shepherd and move Jarris up to the 3, Furphy to the 2, and kind of go a little bit bigger and see what you have there. But yeah, it's just we've seen little flashes of him at the 3, but not enough of it. And yeah, I want to see more from him. I really do. I think that there is a lot more potential there, and it feels almost like he's saving it for whatever reason. And I'm just like, this is not the time to save it. You need to go all out and show what you got. Now, I will say this: Deron Holmes, one of our
Oh, this one
favorites that we
hurt.
interviewed 2 years ago, tore his Achilles in summer league. He's out for the season, and he was going to have a very fun season opportunity here with the Nuggets as their backup center. He's out for the entire year, so just a bummer for him. But like, you don't want to see guys get hurt in summer league, obviously. And I understand maybe Jarris is like a little bit nervous about that, but you can't be nervous about that. You got to go out there and prove yourself because there's guys that are hungry in this league, and they will come and take your spot if you don't earn it, and it's not going to be given to him. He knows that. It's just I want to see him. He's not been bad. He's been fine. I feel like I'm being hard right now, but
So
it's
do I.
because
We're right,
but
though. I mean, look, it's not to
I
sound cocky or right, but it's like he's too
there's more there.
talented. Yes, there is more that he could be giving right now. I mean, look, I said 25 points in game one, 15, in game two. He's averaging 7 rebounds and those. Like, that is good stuff, but that's not what we're looking for. That's not how you're going to get on the court for this Pacers team. They have enough scoring. So we're only being hard on him because he is that talented and capable of more.
Who do you want to talk about next here?
I think Enrique Freeman deserves a shout out.
Yeah.
I thought for Enrique Freeman, I mean, we try not to spill too much about, in game one, about his play in game two, but 14 points on 5 of 5 shooting. We saw he hit a 3. That's something that we talked about was a newer part of his game. He really wasn't shooting any threes at all before his final year at Akron. So good to see he goes 1 of 1 from 3-point land. He has 5 free throw attempts. That led the Pacers. It tied Oscar Tshiebwe. So, good to see. I thought from a rebounding standpoint, nothing crazy. He had 3 boards, but like he was just really efficient, played smart, was flying around there, just hustling. I loved what I saw out of Enrique Freeman, and I think just so far, I think he's going to be one of those guys we might look back and see in that second round of one of those guys that was taken really late that should have been taken earlier, but maybe not enough players knew about him. Enough teams knew about him.
Yeah. I mean, to me, and this might be a bit of a hot take, so I'm sorry if this is too hot of a take after 2 games of summer league, but it kind of feels like he is the Kendall Brown replacement.
I like it, and I'm here for it. I really am. And I saw similar stuff on Twitter. People saying cut Brown, give the spot to Freeman. I think it was Rooster who said that. So you know how Rooster is. But Rooster, you're not wrong. I think a lot of people agree with you here.
Yeah, honestly, it's just like Kendall Brown does some nice things, but like he's just never going to be the level of impact of a player I don't think that Enrique Freeman can be.
Yeah.
And when Kevin Bowman was on this podcast with me a couple of days ago, Facci last week, he talked about his story and like he talked to somebody that covered him at Akron and just how like the story of Enrique Freeman, just he feels like there's a lot of potential there for him too. And you don't want to overhype a guy that was picked 50th, 51st, whatever that pick ended up being, whatever it was, but like this is a guy that when you watch him play, you wouldn't look at the box score. You could just say he's made a difference in the game. Where when I was just watching and I didn't look at my box score till later, I felt like he was more impactful at times than Jarris Walker. So that to me is kind of a problem because you want to see Walker, your lottery pick, be the most impactful player out there. But it also speaks to how impactful Enrique Freeman was and just how all over the place he was. I mean, not the same amount of rebounds in this game, just 3 rebounds, but still just active on the glass. There was one possession, I think there was like 4 Minnesota Timberwolves down there, and he was fighting against 4 of them, and he got his hand on the ball. And the Timberwolves got the rebound, but just his activity down there, making them work for it, just kind of shows how impactful he can be on the glass. I know I said impactful like 3 times there, but I hope I get my point across with what he was doing in the game.
Hey, it was an impactful point. But yeah, no, look, I thought his play was great. It was good to see. I think Ben Shepherd is someone that we talked about before. It's like he's the guy that benefits the most when there's great talent around him. It's hard for him to just go out there and be the guy that's go out there, give us 20. That might not be his game. So I think game one, Ben Shepherd struggled from the field. Game two, he was 3 of 7. He had 10 points. He hit a clutch 3 with a little over a minute to go. That really kept the Pacers in the game. But overall, I mean, 5 fouls, 3 turnovers, a little bit of a forgettable, performance through 2 games. But I think, like we said, Indiana knows what they're getting out of Ben Shepherd. I think that he shouldn't have been exempt from summer league by any means, but probably would have liked to have seen a little bit more that maybe he could take on a bigger role. Not that he probably would be asked to, but what have your thoughts been on Ben Shepherd through 2 games?
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like you know what his role is, and he knows what his role is. It's very similar to what we said about Oscar Shibwe. Shepard knows, like, I don't need Shepard to show me he can be the guy because that's not
Yeah.
his game and never will be. He's a beneficiary of a TJ McConnell setting him up, of a Tyrese Halliburton, Andrew Nimhart setting him up, play good defense, kind of fill that role. And they're kind of looking to him at times, I think, to be that guy that's that veteran for them a little bit because he did have the experience last year in the regular season, but he just doesn't look comfortable kind of being the leader. He had some nice jump shots there. I think there was one where he really squared himself up, took like an 18-footer, looked pretty good. So, yeah, you like what you're seeing from Ben Shepherd overall because he's impacting the game and the defensive side of things and just not getting too carried away with it. Obviously, had some turnovers here and there. It's just going to happen with young guys and playing in this type of league. But I'm not expecting too much from him. I kind of just thought, okay, if he averages 28 points, like that'd be great, but it's not what I'm expecting from him. I thought we'd see more of the scoring load from a guy like Quentin Jackson, to be honest with you, because of what he did in the G League at times with the points he was putting up. And I'm kind of surprised he hasn't scored more. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I will just say this. When he came out for a little bit and Dakota Mathias went into the game, when you had Mathias and Furphy out there together, the floor spacing just felt different because both those guys were wet tonight. They were hitting everything. And when you have two guys that can space the floor like that, it does open up the paint a little bit more. And they didn't play a ton together, but I did like those few minutes we saw them out there together.
Cota was legit from three. He really was 4 or 5 from three, and it was one of those where I was like, let me look this guy up. Let me look into him a little bit. And I saw, 29-year-old journeyman. He's been around, so it's a long shot for him. But I think a game like this can only help your case to be able to land somewhere, whether it's in the G League or sign another deal overseas. But yeah, 15 points. I thought that was that guy that had me turning my head, being like, wait, who's that? He played the 14 minutes was the fewest of any pacer. The 15 points was tied for the second most. So I thought that was a good performance by Mathias. I thought that was great. And then, not to kick a man while he's down and go back for more, but what I saw out of Kendall Brown today was just it was really rough. It really
Yeah.
was. He had 4 points, 5 fouls, 4 turnovers, 3 assists. He was 1 of 5 from the field. It was just there was not a lot there. And as a guy who's going into year 3, his third trip around summer league, I don't want to, be aggressive. I thought from at least a stat line standpoint, he was one of the biggest underperformers on an A team in this game. It just felt like the turnovers that were going. You mentioned one earlier. It was just like the decision making was terrible. He had a flagrant 1 foul on a 3-pointer by not giving the shooter enough room to land. It was just little things like that I was just like, what's going on here?
Yeah, and it kind of felt like they were giving him more, point forward
They were.
responsibilities. And I don't really understand that because that's not his game to me.
Neither do I.
Like, I think he's more of a run the baseline, get a lob kind of guy, like not a good shooter. He's like a big, he really is. And maybe he did more in the G League. I didn't really watch any of the Mad Ants in the G League. Watched a few games during the showcase when Walker played and Sheboy was playing. But like Kendall Brown to me, like I was really high on him when he got drafted, like I said, but I'm okay if he's not here much longer. But I will say the problem with the Pacers, Facci, in both games combined, 53 turnovers, 58 fouls committed.
Oof.
53 turnovers and 58 fouls committed. You're not going to win basketball games when you're doing that kind of stuff. Obviously, both teams that they played did some bad stuff, turnover wise and foul committing wise. But they only caused. I mean, they had 25 turnovers against Minnesota. Minnesota only had 10 in this game. And it kind of like the last play of the game kind of reminded me of like what this whole thing was about. Like it just kind of like here's a capture of how this has gone for the Pacers. Johnny Furphy is trying to stop a fast break and the guy catches, I forget the guy's name from Minnesota, but he catches the ball and like he undercuts him on accident. And the guy just throws the ball up to like shooting a 3 and they called the foul. And I'm like,
They
are we
did.
really calling this a foul right now
I
with
know.
like 6/10 of a second left? But it was just kind of how everything piled up the last 2 games. And, we got what, 4 more games left of Summer League play? 6 total games?
Yeah. Yeah, they got quite a few. I believe it's right around there. I mean, I'm definitely excited to see a little bit more, but once they pull Jarris Walker, Ben Shepherd, it's gonna be quite a few names that we're not familiar with, and it's gonna look far from the Indiana Pacers. That's why I'm really hoping guys like Johnny Furphy could really put their best foot forward. Enrique Freeman, I think we're gonna get a healthy dose of those players in the final games. One of the last guys I want to highlight is Oscar in game two. I think you saw why probably not really ready to. Well, why is James Wiseman brought in? Like, why isn't Oscar there? Like, game one he was awesome, 17 points, 19 boards. Game two, still a strong rebounding effort. He had 9 boards, only played 16 minutes, but 4 points, 9 boards, 3 assists, just 1 of 5. I thought he's got to be a better free throw shooter. He was 2 of 5 from the line, and I think that this is someone that needs to continue to, being an elite rebounder is one thing that's definitely helpful, but this isn't the 90s where you could average 2 points per game and still be able to get on the court. You got to be able to do a little bit more. And I think for Oscar, I want to see over the remaining games if he's able to be a little bit more consistent, because right now I just think James Wiseman has that much higher upside, compared to Oscar, where you're gonna see him. He's gonna work hard on the glass, but other than that, you really don't know what you're gonna get.
Yeah, the little Big O is what I call him, Oscar Sheboy. Unfortunately, yeah, not a great game today. Fine game, 9 rebounds, active on the glass. He always is active on the glass, but when you see 17 and 19 the game before, and now you see this, it's just a little bit of an underwhelming stat line comparative to both. But he'll figure things out. I don't know if he's an NBA player, Foch. He might be a
Tough.
guy that has a long career in European basketball because I think he's
Definitely
a good
good.
player. He's
Yeah.
definitely a good player, and maybe he can join Patrick Beverly in EuroLeague.
Honestly, historic European offer that we're hearing. I need to see the numbers on historic over there, because that's interesting to see. But for Pat Bev, if it goes out with his last game being throwing the ball into the stands twice and all that, that's not what you want to go out on.
Yeah, and he's suspended already too for I
It's
think what
true.
is it? How many games?
Is it 2 games? I think it might be
Maybe
two.
two. I can't even remember, but I'm not subscribed to the podcast, so I
Yeah.
don't know if we can even be talking about him on our show because we're not subscribed to the pod that he's on. But anyway, that's all I got to say about the first 2 games of Summer League. Pacers, a work in progress here, and there's some good things we talked about. Obviously, I think Furphy kind of highlighted a lot of things. We saw some good things from Jarris. Just want to see a little bit more. Ben Shepherd was Ben Shepherd. Tristan Newton did not impress me whatsoever in the first 2 games. I don't know if college basketball playing with UConn's quite the same level as playing with the Pacers Summer League team. It's a bit of a learning curve there for him, I think, to try to figure out different roles and what the offense is and things like that. So, Enrique Freeman, good story. But other than that, I think we kind of put a bow on the first 2 games of Summer League, and we'll be back probably Tuesday night. We'll probably take Monday off, and we won't have an episode Tuesday morning, but we'll have one Tuesday night, Wednesday morning for you guys, recapping that game and maybe some other stuff. But anything else you want to add before we get off your Foch?
No, I would just say I feel encouraged by Johnny Furphy's play. To me, he is definitely first round talent. I'm really excited about that. I think the Pacers might have found something in Enrique Freeman. It's still early, but overall, I think that this is I have much more excitement for these draft picks, I feel like, than last year's two-way guys where you had Oscar, you had Isaiah Wong, Kendall Brown. I felt like you looked at those two ways as like, I don't really know if any of these guys are going to be able to contribute. I think in this situation, hey, never say never with Enrique Freeman. I think that's going to be a fun guy to watch. And Johnny Furphy, to me, I don't want to say is ahead of schedule or anything like that, but I saw enough to be like, yeah, there's a lot of teams that messed up on letting him slip to the second round.
For sure. And I do want to say Quentin Jackson did play better in game 2 than
He
he did
did.
in
He
game
definitely
one.
did.
So we saw a much more improved Quentin Jackson, but still not improved enough for my personal liking for my starting point guard. But with that being said, Fachi, go ahead and tell everybody where they can find us at on social media.
Absolutely. You can find us on Twitter at PacersPod STP. You can find Alex on Twitter at Alex Golden NBA. I can be found on Twitter at _ FACCI. You can find us on Instagram at PacersPod STP. You can find us on Facebook at Setting the Pace. You can find us on TikTok at Setting the Pace. And Alex, tell them where they can check us out on YouTube.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, go to youtube.com/setting the pace, a Pacers podcast where you can find all of our video content there. Please subscribe as we have rebranded the graphics. Hope you guys like those as well with the new thumbnails and the new layovers, but hope you guys are enjoying that. And Facci's got the new camera, like we mentioned at the beginning of the episode. So, we're looking good over here at Setting the Pace. And shout out, even though the Summer League Pacers couldn't take down Minnesota, the Indiana Fever took down the Minnesota Lynx. And we will just say this: Caitlin Clark did not make the Olympic team. The Olympic coach for Team USA women's basketball is the coach of the Minnesota Lynx, and she refused to talk about Caitlin Clark. So thought it was interesting. Got to eat a piece of humble pie, but Aaliyah Boston, 17 points, 16 rebounds, 4 blocks, 2 assists today. 16 rebounds is a career high for Aaliyah Boston, who was the Rookie of the Year last year and an All-Star. So just want to say that congratulations to the Fever for taking out Minnesota for the games that actually matter. And with that being said, Facci, if you're hoping that Johnny Furphy continues his great play in Summer League for game number 3, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go Pacers.